Hello, everyone. My name is Weston, and I'm joined by Evan. And welcome to the fifth week of the Rangers Gameplan Podcast, where we discuss the week that was the New York Rangers. This week we have 4 games in the slot, and I think the Rangers tried for an accumulative 15 minutes over those 4 games.
Yeah, they definitely didn't give the best effort. It's not like we're just saying that as like optimistic fans, just trying to make excuses like, oh, they weren't trying. No, because in the post game after the Devils game, they kind of asked them like, hey, is it difficult to kind of get your intensity level up when you've already clinched? And they all just kind of said, yeah, like absolutely. And I'm not going to directly quote Adam Fox because I don't remember it off the top of my head, but he essentially said the same thing happened at the beginning of the year. So me and you were both right about kind of like our biggest issue with this team is just they pick and choose when they want to try, which, I mean, if they look dominant in the playoffs, then I won't care. But I would just like them to stop doing that. Because they very easily could have won every single game this week.
Yeah.
And they just didn't really want to. I think specifically in the Devils game, the main point that I was going to bring up is, I mean, obviously it was a big game, and it's not like they got blown out, but they definitely were not trying very hard.
No.
I think a couple standouts from that game is especially Jacob Trouba. He was holding up on some hits, like a lot.
Yeah.
And that's just very, interesting considering whenever there's a big game or it's a pivotal moment or something, he does the exact opposite. So as of right now, it seems like they're just really trying not to get hurt, which that's a good thing, obviously. But when you're, playing against what's most likely going to be your first round matchup, you would like to see them, come out with a little more intensity and play a full 60 minutes. I mean, the third period was good, but not great. It's not like they had, that many amazing scoring chances. It was kind of just they were, they had a lot of, possession time and stuff like that, but it's not like they were completely dominating the Devils. I think, if you put your Rangers fandom aside, I think the Devils, you could make an argument they won the third period as well. They just did a great job of kind of shutting everything down in the neutral zone.
Mm-hmm.
The Rangers really only got like 1 or 2 grade A scoring chances in that third period, and they couldn't capitalize on it. So they definitely just didn't have it that night. And then the Buffalo game was, oh man, that's I looked at that as more of a negative than the Devils game, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, I mean they had 2 shots in the first, and in the second they had I think 11 total after the second, and it's not like you're playing a phenomenal team. So they just definitely just weren't giving much effort there, and I don't really understand why.
The Rangers, it was a week on Monday, the first game of the week, right? The Blue Jackets game. They totally just dogged that game. They went with a solid 40% effort, and they won by 4. And I think that just set the precedence in their mind of like, okay, yeah, we are phoning it in the rest of the week. And you saw that. On the Devils game, they definitely didn't try nearly as hard as they could. I was upset with that game because I think I said it in the podcast. I know I said it on the actual channel. I wanted 2 things from that game. I wanted them to, anytime they had the puck, fire it on net and finish the checks. And they didn't really do either of those.
And
they didn't.
I think one of my bigger takeaways from that game is they were not playing a playoff style of hockey.
No.
I mean, especially in the top 6, they were trying to do some highlight reel stuff, which you're not going to get away with in the playoffs. I mean, I think there was one, not to single anybody out, but I think in the second period, late in the second period, Tarasenko had a wide open shot in front, and he decided to not shoot and try to go between the legs and backhand and probably pass it to Panarin. It's just like, what are we doing? It's a 1-goal game. You can't be doing that stuff. It wasn't just him. It was all of them. But that frustrated me because it's like, leading up to that game, it's not like they weren't aware of how big of a game it was. They, all the players were getting interviewed about jumping them in the standings, all that stuff. And it didn't seem like they were super concerned about it.
Yeah.
And like I said last week, I'm not really super concerned about it either. I would rather them, it kind of contradicts what I'm saying, right? Because I do want them to give effort and beat teams they should.
Right.
But I don't want to see them go into this all-out battle against the Devils and end up losing a guy or two. It's just not worth it at this point, especially considering you could still pass them anyway, regardless if you won that game or not. Maybe if that was game 82, I would expect a little bit more out of them, but I'm not expecting them to, get into this full line brawl and give 110% when they really don't have to.
Yeah. Because my thing, I don't disagree with you on the you don't necessarily want all-out warfare, because I think it was the Blue Jackets game. I forget who it was on the Blue Jackets, but skating into Igor and then starting a big old, not fight by any means, but just a nice, everybody comes together and aggressively hugs you in the corner of the ice.
Yeah, and just, some
it's
profanities here and there and stuff like that.
It's a last place team versus a playoff team. I didn't think that was at all necessary. With the Devils game, the positive I'll say of the fact that they didn't play a playoff style game against the Devils, they don't have that film to go off of if they do get down in the dirt, this is how we can conceivably beat them. They played it like it was a game in October.
Absolutely.
And again, I would have preferred you won that game, because you could have genuinely, I think with the way the rest of the week played out, there's a 3-point difference. So you take 2 away from them. Yeah, we would currently be tied with them. And then if we held the tiebreaker, we'd be over them for the standings, which is a crying shame, ultimately, because it is that close. And obviously, it would be incredibly difficult for the Rangers to do it. First place isn't even out of the question by a mathematical standpoint, which is wild for how close the Metro is. But it was a matter of, they have not gotten up in a while now for a game, really since that Pittsburgh game. Like I can't remember if it was the first or the second of the back-to-back Pittsburgh games in Madison Square Garden. They haven't gotten up since then. And the 2 games you lose this week were incredibly winnable. The games you won, you damn well should have, because it was Columbus and then Washington. And going directly from Columbus to the Devils, I can understand that that's mentally got to be difficult to go from a team who is so deeply entrenched in the Bedard race. They have not been playing meaningful hockey games since, maybe December, to the Devils, who that was their Stanley Cup for the players, for the fans. I'm not even going to try to get into that, but Devils love more than anything else beating the Rangers. And going into that, I want to say it was before that game. It might have been directly after that game, where Gallant said he more or less has his playoff lineup set and he knows where he wants the lines to be. He's just going to kind of mess around. And that was the total penny drop moment. I'm like, oh, they are not going to try for the rest of the week. They are not trying for the rest of the season. They are just waiting until the record says 0-0 and you're playing playoff hockey. But until then, I don't think they're going to give that effort anymore. And I don't know that I can get up for the losses at this point in the season. It's incredibly frustrating, because you lose back-to-back games by 1 goal, where the other team laid everything they had out there. Maybe not everything the Devils had. I think they held back a little bit. But Buffalo threw everything they had at the wall. They had hellfire and brimstone trying to win that game. They win it by 1 in overtime. And the Devils game was just, God, if you would have... I'm not even asking that you go 100% pedal to the metal. I'm saying just give 60% and you probably win that game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, to mention the Buffalo game, I think the goal that kind of, drove it home that they weren't trying was the Jeff Skinner overtime goal, because they didn't even try to play defense there, and they didn't really try to play defense the whole game. And I think, yesterday against the Capitals was kind of, obviously that's it was a good win. They dominated for them for most of the game. But the one thing that I noticed was, I think it was the second Capitals goal, where, Igor literally made like 6 saves.
It was
like 6 or 7 saves, and the Capitals finally find a way to put in the net and score, and you could visibly see him screaming at them.
Oh, he was livid, and he had every
because
right
he's
to
like,
be.
there's no way that puck should still be anywhere near him.
No.
I mean, it was like he made like 6 or 7 saves. It was right in front of the crease for like 10, 12 seconds. Like, that's just unacceptable. I know that, like we've been saying this whole time, they're not really trying all that stuff, but it's just, that's not a difficult play to make. And so that's one of those things. It's like that type of stuff just cannot be happening in the playoffs.
That goes beyond not trying to just forgetting fundamentally how to play hockey. Like,
yeah, I mean, the Rangers had all 5 skaters right in front of the net, and nobody even got their stick on it the whole time.
Also,
it's that was just unbelievable to me, because it's like, how, like, are you? I know they were winning by like 3 at the time.
Yeah,
but come on, like that's just ridiculous. And I think it is, as much as you would rather not see it happen, it's kind of nice to see Igor, show his displeasure with them from time to time. I think the past couple weeks, he's been showing that a lot more. I'm sure it's happened in the locker room and stuff like that in the past, but you're seeing a lot of times where there's an odd man rush or something, or whatever the case may be, and he saves it, and he immediately drops it and kicks it into the corner or something after they blow the whistle. And he's not doing that by accident.
No.
He's trying to show them something. I've never really seen him do that consistently as he has recently, and I think it's just because he's trying to get them to give a shit. That's really all that is. It's pretty much once a game at this point that he does something like that, and it's kind of nice to see that they at least have somebody yelling at them, because I'm not sure if the coaches do. I'm not sure if even Trouba does it. So it's just nice to see that they're kind of getting somewhat held accountable by someone in the organization after they give up chances like that. That's really the main takeaway I had from stuff like that.
It is bonkers, though, that the one that's finally holding them responsible is the goaltender. Like, that is...
Yeah.
And also, it's impromptu and off topic. I sent you the goal, or the expected goals from Money Puck for that Capitals flurry. It's incredible to look at.
Oh, yeah.
No, that was... And my thing with, briefly, on the defenders trying to defend in that style, you wouldn't have Shesterkin go down to the other end for a power play and play the point. Why are you putting bodies in the blue paint?
It's
you're inhibiting your goaltender. And again, you're in that last little bit of stretch. You want to make sure you're polished in a good way and get all the brain farts out of the way right now. Because if that happens in a playoff game, I mean, Shesterkin might have taken them out to center ice and beat them to death with the paddle.
And I think since he's got his confidence back, he's definitely able to show them a lot more how unhappy he is with them. I think this week there was just a lot more unacceptable goals than usual. And I think the main one that really got to me was the first goal in the Devils game, where they essentially had 2 forwards crash the net at the same time with nobody trying to defend them. And I'm just like, that's an unsavable shot, and nobody... It's one thing to miss one assignment on one guy. Obviously, you don't want that to happen, but it happens. But 2 guys that nobody on your team are even looking at, that's unacceptable to me. And I have confidence they wouldn't be that lazy in a playoff game, but you can never have any guarantees. And at this point, who knows when Ryan Lindgren is coming back?
Yeah.
It's, there's 5 games left. And I think if he doesn't play against Tampa on Wednesday, that's definitely pretty concerning to me. Just because that is the last meaningful game of the season, if you want to call it that. That's pretty much the last good team you're playing. Obviously, you play Toronto the last game of the season, but...
No, you said the right thing to start with.
Yeah. So it's, it's a primetime game against the team that eliminated them last year. If you're not going to play him then I don't know if he's going to play game 1.
Yeah.
Gallant said that he guarantees that he's going to play before the season ends, but we all know how he loves to lie, so we'll see.
It's gonna
I
be a
just
weekend
wouldn't
at
see the
Bernie's type
purpose.
thing.
I just wouldn't see a purpose in sitting him against Tampa, and then he's in the lineup against the literal St. Louis Blues the next night. I just don't see what the point in that is. So, um, we'll see what happens. I mean, everybody wants to say that they're going to play infinitely better with him in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that. Not to say that he doesn't make a difference. He obviously does. But I just feel like every goal the Rangers give up is so preventable. It doesn't. It's pretty rare that it's just like, oh, that was just a great shot. That was, you know what I'm saying? It's
Mm-hmm.
always an odd man rusher. It's always,
There's a wide
failure
open
to
dude.
clear the puck. Yeah, it's just things like that, and that's pretty much what we've been talking about since we started this. The one thing I was going to mention is I believe we have one more after this before the playoffs start,
Yeah.
depending on when game one is. I'm pretty sure that will be the case because I think that the season ends on a Thursday, and I wouldn't imagine they would wait till like the next week to start the playoffs. So it would most likely be before that Monday.
I vote
And
that we just totally.
I just hope that next week it is more positive.
Mhm.
Not to say that they've been like god awful,
No.
but I would just rather not have to beg for them to try. That's all.
I feel.
Go ahead.
I feel getting Ryan Lindgren back might help with the effort a little bit for the lone reason of that dude. No matter what game it is, no matter it could be
he's all over the ice,
Tuesday night game in November, and he's going at it like it was Game 7 against.
It'll be exactly. It'll be a Tuesday night in November against like any of the West Coast teams, and he's bleeding like 5 minutes in. That's just the kind of player he is.
The season has not started until he shedded blood.
He's usually bleeding. Usually before the second period starts in every game I've ever seen him play. So it'll definitely make a difference, and I think he's more of a leader than anybody really gives him credit for. I think it's kind of weird because everybody, this definitely is a young team, but a lot of these players have been around for much longer than it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Fox and Lindgren are pretty much veterans in this league now, so I think they, when they have something to say, I think, everybody kind of listens up. Lindgren seems to, like you said, he just seems to give every bit of his effort every night. And obviously, I think he could have played for a while now. I think the main thing with him is, like we just said, every time he's on the ice, he's going to go all out. Mm-hmm. And so if he's not completely 100% healthy, you run the risk of him getting hurt again just because he's not going to change his play style, whether his leg is broken or not. That's just how he is. So if he's not fully healthy, just don't play him. But it's such an odd situation because he's been traveling with the team. He's been doing all that stuff. So I'm not really sure what's happening there. Like I said, if he's not going to play against Tampa, just sit him until the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's no reason for him to be playing against teams that are hoping to get the number 1 overall pick. There's no purpose in that. And I mean to touch on this past week's games a little bit, I think they definitely win that Devils game with Lindgren, simply because both of the goals were in situations where he could have made a play.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the Meyer goal.
Yeah, if the first goal, Lindgren is not going to let somebody drive to the net like that.
No.
Completely for free, and then he would be on the penalty kill.
Yeah.
And that Meyer goal was just that was just a complete miscommunication, and it's one of those things where, obviously it's tough to say, who would have scored and who wouldn't have, depending on who's on the ice. But it's just both of those goals were essentially at fault of two players who shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. So it's a little tough to really get on them that much. But I think the offensive inconsistency mainly boils down to the fact that they just weren't like we've said this whole episode, they just weren't trying very much. And, Gallant and all the players were, specifically Gallant was very upset when, after the Buffalo game, he said something along the lines of, ever since they clinched, they stopped trying. It's something very close to that. And you could very obviously see that because it's very unlikely for any team in the sport to get 2 shots on goal in a period. So you have to really, you have to be completely god awful to let that happen, or you just have to not be trying. You can easily get like at least 10 shots on goal by accident if you're a good team. So they clearly just didn't want to be there in that game.
It's a matter of, it feels like they've not learned the lesson despite being yelled it into them multiple different times in the past 2 weeks, where it's, you've got to play a full 60. They play terrible in the first period, they start to bring it back in the second, and then they outshoot the daylights of you in the third. And it's just rinse and repeat for every single game. It's like that. Even the Devils game, well, it was a lot closer, and I think you could debate the Devils outplayed the Rangers in the third because they were playing, if you want to say, their type of third period. Rangers outshot him. I thought they outchanced him. And maybe the Devils weren't trying. Maybe they were just totally content to turtle. But I can't imagine a team like the Devils, who, they're not stupid by any means, would look at that 1-goal lead against a team like the Rangers with that top 9 and say, yeah, just turtle with a 1-goal lead. That's fine. I can't imagine that they would say that. And maybe I'm wrong. But I thought the Rangers outplayed him towards the end of that game. And again, you looked pathetic against them in the first. I think the Eric Holla goal, which you already mentioned, was bad. The Timo Meier goal, I was just watching it in real time, losing my mind. Because, I understand that he has not been incredible since going to the Devils. He's been slightly worse than he was with the Sharks. Slightly. But that's Timo Meier, standing unguarded within the face-off marks at center ice.
Yeah.
And I get that you're
trying to do as well. The Devils' power play is a lot like the Rangers, where they are going to try to do the same thing every single time. And it's just frustrating to give that goal up right there because you know exactly where that puck is going to go, and you don't make any type of an effort to prevent that from happening.
I think what was so hard on that one was just watching Shesterkin's body language as he sat there in the crease of there's nothing I can do. I am completely cooked without a paddle. No one's going over to even say hello to him. He's just sitting there completely open. And you get that against you. It was insane. The fact that you had 2 shots against Buffalo was hilarious in the first period.
I really couldn't believe that. That was genuinely insane.
I've got to wonder what Devin Levi
Buffalo
thought.
Was playing. Yeah, that's what. And halfway through the second, they had 7. So I was like, when are they gonna start playing? It was crazy to me. I am pretty sure they ended the second period with 11 shots or somewhere around there. I think they ended up with over 30. But I was just like, what is going on? Because how many minutes have to pass by before somebody starts screaming or something on the bench? It was unreal to me. And I'm surprised in that game that out of all games, Gallant didn't completely blend up the lines. He definitely changed them midway through, but I was expecting to see some weird stuff. He really only changed the top 6 around. But I was expecting to see, I don't even know at that point. They literally didn't have a shot for, I think 12 minutes straight. And I was expecting to see Tyler Mott just, immediately with Patrick Kane. And that didn't happen, which I guess is progress. But I was... that game, I was just in complete disbelief. They definitely turned it up in the third period. It is what it is, but... it just gets completely washed away when you give up that bad of a goal in overtime.
Yeah.
Those are 3 of, some of your top guys that literally aren't even trying to play defense there.
Also, with the first period where you get 2 shots, I think Devin Levi is going to be a very good goaltender in the NHL. I think from his comments alone, you can tell that, and this is 100% the old head talking, he's got that dog in him simply from his quotes. He is going to be good. That is a 21-year-old toddler sitting in net. If you have it at center ice and there's no one in front of you, shoot the puck. I can't get over that.
That was definitely my biggest complaint about that game.
It wasn't like they had 40 blocks in the first period either, where their defensemen were just laying out to save any shot. They just weren't shooting.
Yeah, and it's not like they didn't have the opportunity to shoot. They just, I mean, not to make it seem like they had a ton of offensive, zone time in the first period, but they definitely passed up on a lot of what would have been chances and didn't even get a shot out of it. And it's one of those things, like you just said, I don't care how good the goaltender prospect is. Anytime you're making your NHL debut, you are going to be terrified, especially when the team you're making your debut against has a bunch of different players that you have grown up watching and know to be superstars. He was most definitely, shaking for at least the first 5 minutes of that period, and they didn't even test him. And I'm not trying to make it seem like they would have scored 6 goals on him in the first period. He is a very good goaltender.
And he played great.
Yeah, but the fact that they just didn't even make an attempt to test him whatsoever was insane to me. I think they probably could have gotten out of that first period with a couple goals if they really wanted to, but they clearly didn't. And in the third period, he was awesome. That was literally the only time he got tested in the game, was in the last 20 minutes, and he was great. But I think you gave him too much time to really settle in, and I couldn't believe that they let that much time go by without actually trying to test him. I mean, they literally did not even make an attempt to pepper him whatsoever.
Yeah, by the time that you actually started to put shots on net, I can only imagine that he was like, this shit's easy, man. I was nervous about this.
Yeah, and they were shooting into his chest a lot. Obviously, he had some great saves.
Oh, yeah.
There was quite a few highlight reel saves there, but
there were a couple of great pad saves.
Just,
he had a very nice evening. But
yeah,
that's
95% of them were just gimmies, and I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" I know they were on second end of a back-to-back, and not to make excuses, but the one thing I will give this team a little bit of credit for is I feel like a lot of the really bad games this year have come off the back-to-backs, or during the back-to-backs, I should say, and it feels like to me they have way more back-to-backs than any other team in the league.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's up with that. It legitimately feels like they have like 2 to 3 back-to-backs per month. That might be an exaggeration, but if I go through the schedule right now and actually count how
We've
many
had 8 back-to-backs in the past 2 months and some change. 2 months.
And that's only the past 2 months.
Yeah.
And it's, I think they would have a lot more points if that weren't the case. Not trying to make it seem like they'd be the Bruins or anything, but that definitely takes a toll on the team. It's unreasonable to ask them to be perfect.
Well, it's also how many of the back-to-backs have travel with them.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the schedule making, if you're going to play in New Jersey on Thursday night, why would the Sabres game be in Buffalo instead of MSG, which is like 6 minutes from Prudential Center? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, just switch the home games between the Sabres and the Rangers. Just have them play in Buffalo at a different time of the year, and then if you're gonna have a back-to-back, just make that one in MSG on that Friday. I don't understand it.
It almost seems simple now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's silly of me to think they would do anything that actually makes sense.
Also, the last month, the Rangers only had one singular back-to-back was January.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
They've been boned.
It's like I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but I just feel like it's a very unreasonable ask for this many back-to-backs.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the amount of back-to-backs that are absolute hikes from each other. And I just don't understand. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe every team has this. I don't really know, but it doesn't seem like that to me. I think they would have at least another, if I want to be generous, maybe like 6 to 8 points if they didn't have this many back-to-backs, because I feel like they drop at least a lot of the second, half of the back-to-backs this year. So you definitely have a little more, cushion in the standings, but is that really something I'm super concerned about? No. But it's just been something I've been thinking about all year. Like, I feel like it seems like every week it's like, oh, we're going to play in Philly on Wednesday, and then we're going to San Jose the day after. That's just what it feels like. And I think that's just, I've never seen this many back-to-backs before, and I've been watching the Rangers my whole life. So it just definitely feels a little bit odd to me.
It's about 50-50 with the back-to-backs. Like, they do usually, occasionally they'll squeak out a win. I barely count the Nashville back-to-back as a win, because that...
They were playing the, what is it, the Milwaukee Admirals?
God bless the Nashville Predators. They have gone through it this year.
Yeah, that's
like
we could probably talk for 2 hours on all the things that have gone wrong with them this year. That it's a very long list of things that have gone terribly wrong for them.
And they're somehow still alive in the playoff picture.
The West is just really bad. It really is.
Holy God. They're only 5 points out, and they have 2 games on hand of Winnipeg.
I mean, Vegas is considered the top dog in the West, and I think if you asked any of the playoff Eastern Conference teams if they want to play Vegas tomorrow, they would say yeah. Honestly, I would be shocked if a Western Conference team wins the Cup this year.
There's no
I
chance.
would be stunned, because it's none of them are anywhere near any of the top East teams in depth or anything. It's such a significant gap.
It's off topic, but I'll say it. The Knights are the number 1 team in the West, and the number 6 team in the East. So the third of the Atlantic, which is Tampa right now. I'd take Tampa right now, 100%.
Yeah.
And Tampa's bad this year, or at least not as good as they were. I think that would be the only... I think Tampa and Vegas is the only series that would go 7. But Toronto, Boston, Rangers, Devils, Carolina, that series is ending in 6 or 4.
Yeah, any of the true contenders in the East are just miles ahead of any team you want to pick out in the West. I think the only team in the West that really has a chance, this is my complete total opinion, but if you want to pick a team that could win the Cup, I think you have to go Oilers, just because of McDavid. You can never really count him out, because he could just score 6 points on you every single game he plays in the series. He could legitimately do that. Not even to mention Draisaitl, and the rest of the team really isn't, all that great. But what McDavid is doing this year is genuinely once in a lifetime stuff. So
Connor McDavid, man, I think I said it once in the group chat. I'll say it again. Connor McDavid robbing us of an incredible Rocket Richard race, I will not forgive him for.
Yeah,
it's so close after him.
He needs to be promoted to a different league. It's genuinely getting to that point.
Whatever's above this. Because if you remove him and Draisaitl from points, because they're they're not the same player by any means, but whenever McDavid scores, Draisaitl gets a point, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's 146 for McDavid, 120 for Draisaitl, 106 for Nikita Kucherov. It's so much of a gap when you get past McDavid.
Nobody is. What Connor McDavid is doing this year, and I think he's held up a little bit recently because he's trying not to get hurt. But he is just. I think he has 146 on the year as we're currently speaking.
146. 62 of those are goals, by the way. Just
Yeah, and in today's game, that's just ridiculous. It doesn't snuff up to all of Gretzky and Lemieux's records and stuff like that, because it's just genuinely impossible to do nowadays.
But good God.
But it's ridiculous. He is a multi-point per game player, and every goal he scores is a highlight reel goal that it looks just completely effortless. And if there was honestly one team in the West that, let's say the Rangers make the Stanley Cup Finals, God willing, and if they had to play the Oilers, I would still favor the Rangers in that series.
Yeah.
I think everybody would, but I would be terrified just because there's no way to stop Connor McDavid. There just isn't. That's really the only team I'm scared of.
I will say, a Stanley Cup final between Connor McDavid and Igor Shesterkin would just be... that would be mint.
Yeah, I don't think they've played against each other too much, like, in their careers either. So I think that would be awesome just because I think Igor's gotten, like, 1 or 2 games against McDavid. Maybe, like, 3.
He had that
I'm not sure.
Incredible shootout where McDavid shot it on Shesterkin, and I want to say it was a glove save a couple months ago.
Yeah, there was...
that was just an incredible moment. And if you could get an entire playoff series in the highest stage...
Yeah, series of that, yeah.
would be insane
that would be awesome. Because I feel like the reason... I mean, obviously they don't play against each other a lot because it's, 2 different conferences. But I feel like a lot of the times that the Rangers play the Oilers is on the second night of a back-to-back. Which most of the time Igor Shesterkin is not playing that game.
Are you excited for the exciting goalie matchup? Suns last year of Connor McDavid versus Keith Kincaid.
Yeah. Oh man. I don't even want to think about that. Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's really the only team that I'm scared of in the West. Here's what I've been thinking about, right? Because this Rangers team is definitely way better than they were last year.
A lot.
But the Eastern Conference is ridiculous.
Oh my god.
And I think if they lose to any of the top contenders, obviously this team has the potential to make a deep run, but you can't genuinely be upset. Like any of the, the top 3 or 4 teams in the East, if the Rangers lose to them, it's like, man, they're just playing a really good team. As long as they don't get completely dominated in the series, you can't really be that upset. Like if they lose to the Bruins in 6 or 7, you're not asking for them to tear it down or anything like that. Like that.
No.
That's the point I'm at this year because I'm confident that they're better than they were last year, but it's just hopefully it matters. I mean, the Bruins, hopefully they kind of somebody takes them out before we have to play them or something like that. I think every single team that's in the playoffs is feeling that way about them. So we'll see what happens.
No, I agree. Anyone outside of like the Islanders or Pittsburgh, if you lose in 7 to them, you just kind of put your hands up and go, what else could you want? I mean, Boston is going to finish with over 130 points. They just are. They're at 125 now. They have 5 games left. Boston is historically good. The Leafs are just kind of overdue. And I know everyone likes to clown on them, and I know I did earlier in this exact podcast. They look good. And if you get Matt Murray when he's playing well, damn, he is hard to beat. Tampa is Tampa. I need not say more. Carolina looks great. The Devils look great. The Rangers look great. And that was... You mentioned of like the Eastern Conference is so insane this year. That was my first thought when they went for the Kane trade. Was just like, okay, that's awesome that you're doing this. That being said... This is the year you've decided to push all the chips in? This year. With the Eastern Conference like this. You didn't do it last year when, it was open. If you make the Kane trade last year, you spank Tampa up and down the ice.
Yeah, last year's team just simply wasn't deep enough. That's all it was. And this lineup is still surreal to look at on paper. It's just disappointing that this is one of the best Eastern Conferences that have ever been assembled.
I had a friend of mine reach out to me this past week. It was like Friday, and they're like, hey, how does playoff seeding work? Because they don't watch hockey much. And I'm like, okay, here's how this works. Only watch the Eastern Conference. That's where the games are. Watch the Eastern Conference. If you possibly can free up a night, just watch any of these 8 teams, because it is going to be a bloodbath. And the Viking that emerges from the East is going to just obliterate. The Wild are leaving the Central?
Yeah, I saw that before. And they don't even have Kaprizov right now. It's just like, it's a joke over there. It really is.
They're having a lot of fun.
I think this episode in particular, it's one of those things where all the issues that have happened, we already have touched base on
Yeah.
multiple times. And we're kind of at the point where it's just like, please, just nobody get hurt and let's get the playoffs started. So I think the kind of what I wanted to touch into a little bit is just kind of the playoff matchups, not only for the Rangers, but I think just around the league a little bit, because I think the one that the only one that's set in stone right now is obviously Leafs Tampa.
Oof, man.
And um, I want to feel like this is the year the Leafs finally win around. I do. I want to feel that way. But I mean, Vasilevsky has flipped a switch in the past couple weeks. I think he has like a 926 save percentage in his last 10 or somewhere around there.
That sounds
And
right.
they've looked pretty good recently. And all I'm going to say is I'm going to take Vasilevsky over Matt Murray 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So if he keeps that up, I don't see how the Leafs get it done. I really don't. Especially, I mean, you want to talk about like Brian O'Reilly and all that stuff. The lineup looks good, but I don't know if it matters. I don't know, because the goaltender made the difference last year, and in that series, and I want to root for them to at least just win a round.
It would be great
But
for them.
I just don't know if it's gonna happen. I have no clue.
I get that, because I don't like saying when I talk about a player, like, just, oh, they're a different player when the playoffs get there. But there is no player that I can feel good about saying that than Vasilevsky. Like, even in the years where he feels mediocre. Like, last season, when he had a quote-unquote down year, and there was this big, like, oh, is he maybe coming to the... No. You get to the playoffs, he was unbelievable. And...
Yeah, and even if during the playoffs, even if it looks like he's had a couple bad games, it doesn't matter.
He can shake
and
it
we
off.
saw that we saw that firsthand last year. They lit him up in the first two games, and then he just shut the door the rest of the series. And I have a difficult time believing he's not going to do that against the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Who knows? That the Maple Leafs are a very weird team to analyze, because they look so good every year and then it just doesn't matter. But I think their biggest issue is obviously they just haven't had a goalie, and not to say that Matt Murray's like terrible, but he's going to be playing against Vasilevsky. So how can you expect to win that series? Especially when a lot of your core players aren't necessarily playoff performers.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews gets eaten up year after year in the playoffs. He's had some big goals here and there, but when it matters, their core players do not come through. They haven't done that yet, and I just have a tough time believing that it's going to be against the Lightning that they physically can't beat. I just have a very hard time believing that this, they're going to play the same team as they did last year, and they're going to get a different result because of, I think the only thing that could possibly go their way is just if they just have a magical series and Vasilevsky isn't on his game, which I'm really not counting on.
The last 4 games, because you brought up Vasilevsky, was 32 of 34, 31 of 31 shutout, 30 of 31, 38 of 38 shutout.
Yeah, I mean, come on now. Like,
also, that's against
the playoffs
Boston,
start in like a week and a half.
Yeah, week and a half. That's Boston, Carolina, Washington, and the Islanders. So this isn't that he's been playing garbage opponents. He's not been playing, like, the Blue Jackets every night. He's playing 3 different playoff teams and bodying them into the ground.
Yeah.
Was that in Boston? Or was that... I gotta find this out real quick. But no, that's the thing. Because we saw it last year with Igor Shesterkin, where he was the best goaltender in the league for last season. But overall, if you want to say it, maybe a top 2 or 3 goaltender in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just overall from the past few years. He could have been the second best goaltender on the planet against Vasilevsky. That's all you needed. That was That was it.
Man. And like I said before, I think with the Leafs, when you watch those games, they're obviously a very fast team. but a lot of their goals just come from video game like stuff. Like Austin Matthews is like wide open 20 feet from the net and he does his toe drag snipe. That just isn't going to happen against the Tampa Bay Lightning and Andre Vasilevsky. If they could find a way to kind of play a more playoff style game with, a little more gritty stuff like that, maybe, but they've never shown that before. So this series is very interesting to me because I think the Leafs have the opportunity to kind of go over the hump, but they're just playing. It's a nightmare matchup for them.
It's incredible.
And even if they do win a round, I don't know how you make a deep playoff run with that. They haven't had a goalie in forever, so it's pretty much impossible to win the Stanley Cup without a goalie.
Yeah.
And unless Matt Murray goes back to his, completely insane run, how he was with the Penguins, I think those days are over, and I don't have a reason to believe that they're not. So I'd be shocked if Matt Murray wins a goaltender matchup against literally Andre Vasilevsky, and I have a very difficult time believing that anybody's really scared of Ryan O'Reilly at this point. I mean, obviously he's a good player. The vast majority of teams in this league would take him in their lineup. But that year he won the Cup with the Blues was such a wacky year. He's never been like an elite center. He's never been a true generational talent, anything like that. The Blues had that one magical run, and it collapsed ever since.
That was just a magical run of friendship bullshit and Jordan Binnington pulling a run out of nowhere.
And Gloria. That's all that was. Like, it's just that year. Not to say that they didn't have players on that team. They definitely did have some very good players. But if the vibe around Blues fans is like they don't even care that they won the Cup anymore. Like, they don't care because it didn't even feel real, and it's all just quickly. Yeah, like they didn't even have a second to really enjoy it because it just went completely back to to rock bottom. I'm not trying to sit here and just make this all about hating on the Maple Leafs, but ever since that matchup got locked in, I was just like, that is probably the worst possible matchup for them outside of Boston, obviously. I just don't see them beating Boston or Tampa. I don't think the Leafs have it in them.
It's a matter of, can I see? And the thing is, if you asked me a month ago before the lineup or the matchup was locked in, you're like, hey, who do you think has the better forward core, Tampa or Toronto? I'd say Toronto. It wouldn't be a question. Who has the better defense? I'd say it's close. I'd lean towards Toronto because I really like Morgan Riley. Mm-hmm. If you said coaching, I'd say it's kind of a wash. I don't think John Cooper is this mastermind that a lot of people make him out to be. I think Sheldon Keefe is actually pretty solid. I would have said that's close. The goaltending isn't a question. Overall, the Leafs are a better team than the Lightning, but in a week and a half, 2 weeks, a team is going to be eliminated in the first round, and I can't see the Tampa Bay Lightning being eliminated in the first round after they have made 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals and won 2 of them.
And it's not just Vasilevsky that has the ability to flip a switch.
Oh my God. It's
the reason they have made those playoff runs is because they just literally, no matter who they're playing, they find a formula to beat them other than the Avalanche. And that's literally, and you could make the case that if Braden Point was playing that series, they might have won the Cup again.
If they weren't missing everyone on that roster, they probably beat them. But they were just so cooked by the time they finally made it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's really the main series we could talk about because it's the only series we know of for a fact right now. But it's just that one, I think it's going to go to 6 or 7 again, and I just don't see Vasilevsky losing a Game 7 in the first round
to Matt Murray.
That I can't visualize it.
I kind of like him. That being said, it's just.
But I mean, he's a good, he's a good enough goaltender, but in the playoffs that doesn't work out ever. You can't win the Stanley Cup with a goalie that's like a little above average sometimes when he wants to be. That's not how that works.
And
Especially when the team you're playing against probably has, at least top two, goalie in the world, however you want to look at Shesterkin and Vasilevsky. They have,
it's 1A,
one of the
1B,
best on the planet.
really.
Yeah, it's all it is. Oh man.
Toronto had home ice last year, yeah? Against Tampa.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So you can't even say, oh well, this year they'd have home. They had it last year and they couldn't do it. And
oh man, that one's gonna be crazy.
Also, I look at that team, and I like Toronto a good deal, but you really get down to the nitty gritty of it. Braden Point, if I'm not mistaken, has like nearly 50 goals this season. He's had just a year and a half for him. And you get into a playoff series where you have Braden Point potentially matched up against like Luke Shen and Justin Hall. And
yeah, it's just I'm
sorry, but that's not going to go well. If you want to sit here and tell me that Connor Timmins is going to defend against Steven Stamkos, I'm not going to believe you.
It's just, I will be shocked if the Leafs win that series. And that's not me saying that I think they're that far off talent-wise than the Lightning. They're pretty close, but they just don't have the X-Factor goalie, and they don't have the playoff performers that they need. They just simply don't. That's all it is. All their core players have not shown they can get it done when it matters.
It's one of those things where they just have not shown an ability to play or to win, obviously not win playoff games, but to score playoff type of goals. Even if you look at the goals they score in previous playoff runs, it's highlight reel goals. It's a player misses an assignment, Austin Matthews gets open, finds Mitch Marner wide open, and it's a beaut. And you're not
the Lightning are not the type of team to let that stuff happen in a Game 7. They're just not. So
you're not going to mentally beat the Tampa
my
Bay
entire
Lightning.
Point.
You're absolutely not beating them mentally. The other,
I don't know.
It's not locked up, but the fun playoff matchup of Boston versus Pittsburgh, which would tentatively be a thing.
Barring some magical stuff from our friends in Pittsburgh, that'll probably be over in very swift fashion.
I will say on the bright side for the New York Rangers, no matter what happens, whether the Rangers win or lose in the first round, we will get to watch the New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins get absolutely curbed by the Boston Bruins and Carolina Hurricanes, respectively. So there's always a silver lining out there.
Yeah. And the one other thing I wanted to mention real quick is the Florida Panthers could very easily make the playoffs if they want to. If they want it, they could do it.
Do you think they want to? Is the question.
I don't know. I mean, you see Paul Maurice screaming at them on the bench. They really, even when they win, they play horrible, like really, really, really bad. Though, I mean, the one thing I will say is I would enjoy seeing a series between Matt Tkachuk and Brad Marchand. It would probably be a 4-game series, but I would enjoy it just for a little bit.
That would be a 4-game series, but it would take 7 days, or it would take the length of a 7-game series to clear up all the penalties.
Yeah,
those two going after it after the play would just be.
And honestly, it's one of those things where I think the Florida Panthers are a much better team than they show. Mm-hmm. By a lot of the advanced stats, they are the number 1 offense in the NHL when they want to be. They don't have much defensively, and no matter who they put in goal, it seems to work out very terribly for them. So, like I said, if they want to make the playoffs, it's right in front of them. The other team would be the Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, please.
Now, I don't see any possible chance of that happening. But I would, for the sake of getting the Penguins out, I'm all for it.
I need you to understand how happy I would be to see Buffalo make the playoffs.
If Levi wants to,
they're only
completely put the team on his back, they could make the playoffs.
They're 5 points out, 2 games in hand on Pittsburgh.
That's doable.
That's
I don't know. I don't know how they have. I don't know their schedule remaining.
We're about to find that
But
out.
they could do it. They could do it.
I need.
And all I'm saying is I would enjoy it.
I would.
But they probably score like 3 or 4 goals in the series because they'll be playing Boston. So it would kind of suck.
Here's the thing.
But
I don't think Buffalo would be able to hang with Boston by any means. But
no
they
shot.
have that energy that the Blue Jackets had when they played Tampa. And I'm not saying it would happen, but they just have that crackhead energy of like, we got nothing to lose. We have absolutely nothing to lose. Why not just throw everything we have at the board and see what happens against Boston? Which would result in... like, I think they would make that series last longer than Florida. Or not Florida, Pittsburgh at this moment in time.
Yeah. And I think the one other thing the one other thing I will touch on is obviously I don't want it to happen, but I think the Islanders are going to win a round.
Mm-hmm.
And that is simply because of Sorokin and simply because I don't think the Carolina Hurricanes are as good as they were last year.
Absolutely not.
I know they're winning the Metro right now, but at no point this entire season have I felt scared of them. I think they're just really good at beating up on the bad teams, and I don't know. I genuinely don't see them beating Sorokin in a series. Not to say that the Islanders are going to make a huge playoff run or anything. I just don't. I think out of all the top teams in the East right now, I think the Hurricanes are most likely to get first rounded. That's just me.
I would agree with that. They seem the weakest link of anybody. As far as the truly good teams.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you look at their record and I'm not trying to make it seem like they're a completely overrated bad team.
No.
But last year I was scared of them.
Yeah. And
I feel like they've just, if you look at the lineup, how many players there are you really, really scared of, and I'm not sure
Brett
what
Burns
the deal with.
No longer concerns me, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you got Brady Shea over there still and stuff like that, and they're really not. They're a very aggressive team, which is why, you have a good mix of skilled players there, and when you're that aggressive, you're bound to beat the really bad teams in this league. That's just, I think Rod Brindamore is one of the best coaches, if not, the best in my opinion, in the league right now. I think they have, they're favored in the coaching matchup against pretty much any team, but they're just not as good as they were last year. I think they lose a lot of games that they shouldn't this year, and I think they just struggle against the, top goalies. And Sorokin's been out of his mind this year. So if that ends up happening, I just don't see a world where the Hurricanes really come out with that one.
It's funny that you bring that up because the last game the Hurricanes played was against the Islanders. It was in Carolina. It was a 2-1 win yesterday. They outshot the Islanders 35-22. Sorokin held them in that game. And
I don't think the Islanders are that good. I just think that Sorokin is going to steal them a series this year because he is pretty much Igor level good at from last year. He's been insane. And I just think for a team like the Islanders, who is very, I don't even know how to describe them. They're going to take minimal chances in a game. And that factored in with the, a goalie that isn't giving up very many goals right now, I just could see them stealing it. When it comes to Boston against whoever the hell they play, I'm not even concerned about them losing a game in that series. I think the Hurricanes matchup against whoever they play, which will most likely be the Islanders, I think that is what would definitely come out to be, a pretty good series. I'm not guaranteeing the Hurricanes to lose. I could just see it happening.
He's guaranteed it right now, folks. It's
yeah, I bet every dollar I have on it, and if the Hurricanes win, I'll deactivate all my socials.
Oh, man. That's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, Other than that, obviously, we've talked about the Rangers Devils a lot, and I I I, I think we'll just save that for when it is set in stone, because who knows what's going to happen with the standings. But I think it's pretty much locked up that they're going to end up playing the Devils. So hopefully next week we could kind of say that a little more confidently, and then we'll kind of just fully, dive into to that series.
Theoretically, next week is going to be talk about a few games that happened this week, and then really the meat and potatoes is going to be the preview of that series. Because
yeah,
I'm sorry, if that series is not confirmed with 2 games left on the schedule, what is that would be fascinating.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I could absolutely just see that happening where we just don't know, but who knows? Who knows? So, I mean, this week, obviously, it's all pretty much just the same complaints that everybody's been having for a very long time, along with some positives. The one thing that I did forget to mention just before we get off here, but Jacob Trouba has been fantastic. I don't know if that's just me. I think he's made a lot of big plays in his own zone, and more than people give him credit for. And obviously, the one complaint I had is he didn't really, play like himself in the Devils game, where you're expecting to see a million huge hits and stuff like that. But I think he for the past at least couple months, I think he's been terrific. So I'm definitely willing to give him a lot of credit for that, and I'm just excited to see what happens with him specifically in his first playoff run as the Rangers captain.
I will 100% second that. He has looked really solid as of late, and I'll add one to that before we get off and say I think Miller has gotten a bit of that offense back as of the past week or so. I think he's looking a lot better. It's not to the same level, because last year I want to say Fox had like 80 points. They remind me a lot of the Fox Lindgren pair from last year, where you have Miller playing Fox, where he is a incredible offensive playmaker as far as defensemen can go, and Trouba is just locking everything down in his own zone. They've played great as of late. I want to say Miller has almost been a point per game since the last podcast. I know he's had at least 3 points over the week. He looked great. And
and the main reason I wanted to bring that up is because, when we do break down, whoever they end up playing in the first round, I just want it to be on record that I have been in support of not only that pair, but Trouba for a very long time. So if we're breaking down, specific lines and pairs in comparison to the other team, if I say that Trouba and Miller are better than a certain pair, I just want it to be on record that it isn't completely out of nowhere.
You have felt this way for a very long time.
Yes. So that's really the main reason I wanted to say that, because with my luck, they're going to have some phenomenal game, and I'm going to say that I think they're a better pair, and then, people are going to say that I only thought that because they had like 5 points in a game or something like that. That is not the case. I just wanted it to be on record that I think they are a very, very, very good pair. That's all I wanted to say.
No one will be informing you that you are hopping on a bandwagon on your account right now. You're getting ahead of it now, and I respect that. When Lafreniere wins the Conn Smythe, I want everyone to know I said it first while we're on this topic.
So that's pretty much it. Not the best week, but like I said, we have one more before the playoffs start, and I'm just hoping that we don't have anything super negative to talk about. That's really it.
You have such a simple schedule. You have one game that's a good opponent.
Yeah. Just please.
I beg you.
I don't know.
If they lose to Devin Levi again.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully not. I could see it happening for sure, but hopefully not. So just to quickly break everything down. So it's Tampa Bay on Wednesday. Then they are on a back-to-back going to St. Louis on Thursday. And then they go to Columbus Saturday, and then they play Buffalo Monday, which I'm not sure exactly how the recording will go down since they're playing that day, but we'll see what happens.
The insane energy of recording this as that game goes on.
Oh my God! Yeah, that'll probably get taken down very quickly with the. I could definitely see that being just a very frustrating game and me getting like suspended or something from every platform. So
A good old fashioned banning. We might move that back to Tuesday, all things depending. We'll think about that as the week progresses. But
yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
as for right now, I think we're both good. I've said my piece. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much all good. Like I said, just we'll see how the recording goes down for next week, but hopefully, we know who we're playing in a week and a half by then. So
Hopefully. But as for right now, that is all we have. So thank you all so very much for tuning in to another week of this. We have enjoyed it once again. As always, I am Weston, and go Rangers.
yep. Right, guys. See you guys next week. Go Rangers.